two Government Accountability Office GAO reports talking about. And so what can crop insurance data tell us about weather and climate impacts on agriculture? And so the guiding question here really is, can we parse out those linkages between indemnities and impacts from perils such as drought, and what do those linkages look like? And so ultimately, we hope that our project informs future RMA programs, provides regionally relevant information, and leads to possible targeted adaptation in higher production risk areas. And so three major groups play a role in crop insurance. We have farmers, private insurance companies, and the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation run through the Risk Management Agency. So essentially, producers will purchase a policy for a given crop and pay a portion of the total premium. The FCIC then subsidizes a portion of that premium, which is about 62% on average. Farmers will then receive an indemnity or payment when revenue or production falls below a given threshold based on their policy. And if you're more interested in the details of how the FCIC is run, there's a great Congressional Research Service report. It's only about 10 pages from SHIELD 2015. If you just Google that, it's a great background read on a federal crop insurance. And so given our guiding question, we can couch our objectives in this framework of data visualization and data analysis. Essentially, data analysis is an iterative process. However, it should ultimately be used to clarify the question at hand and help communicate your findings. Our first objective helps us understand what data exists, how to collect such data, and how to manage the data set for our purpose. And the second objective focuses on the research aspect of this project and helps us investigate trends and correlation. And the last objective gets at how do we effectively share this information and produce research that is relevant to our stakeholders. And so briefly, the data that we're using are publicly available from RMA. They're available at this website on the bottom left. Each indemnity or payment is associated with the time, place, they call it commodity or crop, insurance plan, and cause of loss. Annual data with cause of loss exists starting from 1948, while monthly data begin in 1989. For this presentation, we use annual data from 2001 to 2016 to be consistent with our trend analysis to this data the acres affected. And so first, we take a look at the nationwide indemnities aggregated from 2001 to 2016, which totaled almost $100 billion. And here we exclude causes of loss that are revenue related or area based. You can see the top 5 causes of loss for the whole nation were drought, excess moisture, hail, heat, and freeze. And the next 5 causes of loss are cold, wet winters, wind, failure in irrigation supply, hot wind, and flood. And the top 5 causes of loss comprise over 85% of total indemnities for this time period. And we can also look at the top commodities or crops that received an indemnity for the same time period. Unsurprisingly, corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, and grain comprise at least 80% of indemnities. And the next 5 commodities represent less than 3% of nationwide indemnities. And so, but these top 10 causes of loss are not evenly distributed across the nation. This figure breaks out the top 10 causes of loss by climate hub region, showing their relative proportion to the total regional indemnities from 2001 to 2016. So in most areas, drought and excess moisture make up more than 40% of indemnities. However, we can start to see regional differences, especially in the Northwest and Southwest. So while drought makes up a large portion of indemnities in the Northwest, the second largest category of cause of loss is other, which is frost and cold winter. In the Southwest, the top cause of loss is failure in irrigation supply, followed by heat. And it's interesting to note that for the Southwest, the top cause of loss barely breaks 20% of total indemnities. The low fraction values of many cause of loss in the Southwest may be due to the diversity of crops grown in the region. And since most folks may not be familiar with the Southwest hub region, the Southwest includes California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, and as well as Hawaii. While the Southern Plains SP is Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. And then the Northern Plains, and I think Nebraska is in the Midwest, the MW. So we can also look at how specific causes of loss are distributed by region and crop. So for example here, we can take the heat cause of loss and sum those indemnities by region from 2001 to 2016. Here we can see which crops are most associated with the heat cause of loss by region. So while corn is number 1 or 2 of regional indemnities, there's wide variation in the crops affected by heat by region, indicating the diversity of agricultural production in certain areas. In the Southwest, heat mainly affects fruits and nuts, while wheat is over half of regional indemnities in the Northwest. So if we take the Southwest region just as an example, we can plot total indemnities from 2001 to 2016 by commodity. So while wheat and corn are top commodity losses, cotton and a variety of fruits and nuts comprise most of the top 15 crops. We can also show the reported cause of loss by crop. For example, the primary cause of loss of wheat is drought, while failure in irrigation supply in the green is mainly responsible for cotton losses. The Southwest is an interesting case study because of the relative proportion of causes of loss to total indemnities. This figure on the right compares the fractional indemnities by cause of loss for the Southwest, shown in the fill color, the solid fill color in the rest of the region, and kind of a lighter color. And we can also take these regional cause of loss data to a finer resolution at the county level. If you recall, over 40% of indemnities from 2001 to 2016 was drought related. However, the county level map shows a different picture of the top cause of loss, integrating spatial heterogeneity of climate, crops, and socioeconomic factors. So here we plot the top cause of loss by county from 2001 to 2016 using the top 10 nationwide causes of loss. So counties with the light gray indicate no reports of an indemnity during this time period, and the dark gray areas represent a top county cause of loss not represented in a nationwide list. So for example, hurricanes and tropical depressions are a top cause of loss in Florida, while plant disease is actually a top cause of loss in Massachusetts. And so now that we've looked at aggregated indemnities from 2001 to 2016 over different spatial scales, national, regional, and county, we can also look at how causes of loss have changed over time. So this next figure shows annual indemnities summed over the whole country in hundreds of millions of dollars over time. And the relative proportion of annual indemnities by the top 10 causes of loss are shown by the fill colors in each bar. And the dotted lines show when the Farm Bill was passed by Congress. So the effects of the major drought in 2012 are seen not only by the high absolute indemnities, but also as a relative proportion of that year's payments to farmers. On average, 2/3 of the nation was in some sort of drought that year, according to the US Drought Monitor. And moreover, maximum area that was an extreme or exceptional drought reached 20% that year. This next figure shows the annual indemnities aggregated over each climate hub region from 2001 to 2016 with the top 10 nationwide causes of loss shown in different colors. It's important to note that the y-axes are different for each region respective to that region's total indemnity. The variety of causes of loss comprising annual regional indemnities are related to the predominance of certain crops in the region or diversity of crops grown. Causes of loss are not only a function of the crops grown, but also geography, climate, previous agricultural production, and socioeconomic conditions, all of which will vary by region. And there are some other interesting things to note. Drought as a cause of loss is noticeable in each region between 2011 and 2014. The Midwest has the largest range in annual regional indemnities, while the Northeast region has the smallest. Due to the importance of water in the Southwest, the number of irrigated crops, failure in irrigation supply in the light green, unsurprisingly makes up a large portion of indemnities. And in 2011, hot wind comprised a noticeable portion of indemnities in the Southern Plains in this light pink. So as you can imagine, there are many ways to slice and dice the data and visualize, and these figures provide only a glimpse into some of our data exploration and visualization activities. And so thanks to Amy, I was able to receive a list of counties that are in the Ogallala Aquifer region. And so these next few slides will do something similar to kind of a walkthrough by different spatial and temporal scales looking at cause of loss in the Ogallala, what I call the counties in the Ogallala. And so here we look at, again, the fraction of total indemnities from 2001 to 2016 by cause of loss. This top bar shows the top 10 causes of loss, but also other causes of loss that we've excluded, including decline in price in the dark gray and also area plant crops only. And so what we're really looking at are around 95% of all of the causes of loss, which is what we call climate related in the second colored bar. So you can see here for climate related causes of loss, drought makes up 50% of all indemnities from 2001 to 2016 in the counties here in the blue in the bottom right figure. And we can also do something similar and show the fraction of total indemnities from 2001 to 2016 by commodity. And unsurprisingly, the top 5 are wheat, cotton, corn, grain, and soybeans. In terms of top causes of loss spatially, we can look at top county cause of loss from 2001 to 2016. In aggregate, drought, which is in the orange, and hail make up top county causes of loss. However, it's a different story when you start looking at it over time. So in 2001, you can see here is a variety of causes of loss, in 2011 and 2012. And so you can see there is a temporal difference, even if you spatially map these over time. And again, we can look at these causes of loss over time. These are the annual indemnities for the Ogallala counties from 2001 to 2016 by cause of loss in hundreds of millions of dollars. And what's striking is the really large increase in absolute indemnities starting in 2011 to 2014, especially those related to drought. We can also see an increase related to hot wind and heat. So heat in the red and hot wind in the pink. So 2011 to 2013. And we can also look at these indemnities by crop and cause of loss. So here I'm taking the top 8 crops with the reported indemnity from 2001 to 2016 for these Ogallala counties. And those top 8 crops are wheat, cotton, corn, grain, soybeans, dry beans, sunflowers, and peanuts, and everything else is put into other. And what I'm doing here is plotting the total indemnities for each of these crops over time from 2001 to 2016, but also filling in the color based on what was the reported cause of loss. So for example, you can see that the primary cause of loss for wheat grain is drought, but for dry beans, it's mostly hail. And so it's interesting to see if causes of loss are changing over time, but also if the annual indemnity for different crops are changing over time. And so this is kind of the first objective, just doing a data visualization and analysis of what's there by different spatial and temporal scales. And so it's just a snippet of what can be done with these data. Our second objective embeds 2 specific research objectives here. First, we want to assess the trends in indemnities over time by state, cause of loss, and commodity. And our second objective links any increasing or decreasing trends with weather and climate variables. And we essentially want to assess the extent to which short-term weather events and long-term impacts are expressed in indemnities. For this presentation, I'm actually going to focus on results for the Southwest. So this is part of our second objective, which is more researchy. So here we have annual indemnities by state from 2001 to 2016 for the Southwest. As you can see, California and Colorado comprise most of the region's indemnities due to the specialty crops and wheat grown in these areas respectively. So quite noticeable is the sharp increase in indemnities after 2010 during major drought in the region. The figure on the right breaks down annual indemnities by different causes of loss. And again, you can see the effect of drought after 2010 with increases in drought, heat, and failure in irrigation supply. And the size of the bubble indicates the size of the annual indemnity in millions of dollars. And so now we can ask the question, are there significant trends in these indemnities, either by state or cause of loss? And so to assess any increasing or decreasing trends in indemnities, we use the ManKendall test. And this essentially tells us the magnitude and direction of monotonic trends. The ManKendall is well known in trend analysis and has been used in other environmental applications, such as stream flow and wildfires over time. And we apply the ManKendall on annual normalized indemnities from 2001 to 2016 by state and cause of loss. And normalization is done by dividing the indemnities by the acreage to account for changes in policies and or enrollment numbers. Then the red and blue colors indicate the direction of the trend, negative and positive respectively, while the shade indicates the strength. And so dark gray boxes represent insufficient data points to calculate the ManKendall, and we report tau values for those trends reported as significant. So in general, there are increasing trends of normalized indemnities across all causes of loss in most states. Significant trends occur in all 6 Southwest states for failure in irrigation supply, which is not unexpected due to the amount of irrigation that happens on crops here. But we do notice that these trends might be dependent on the scale of aggregation, i.e. instead of using state, using commodities. So that's just a snippet of some of the research that we're doing with this project. Now moving on to our third objective, our third objective is to provide accessible and discoverable data to our stakeholders and partners. So after exploring what data are available and assessing any trends, we need to communicate this to others and eventually receive feedback on all 3 objectives. And so before I detail our data viewer, it's important to highlight existing RMA tools. So really our data portal complements what's already available through the risk management agency. First, they have crop indemnity maps. These are static and don't include cause of loss data, but they are available as PDF for download and show county level crop indemnities over different time periods. The second is an RMA map viewer, which is shown here in the bottom right. It also does not include cause of loss data, and it's only available for after the year 2010, but there are specific commodities, excuse me, and information that you can glean from this tool. And the last tool that's available through the risk management agency is the summary of business shown in the bottom left. Again, it does not include cause of loss data, and it requires further data processing for visualization and analysis. And if you would like more information on these tools, shoot me an email or just Google these terms and you should be able to find them on the risk management website. And so now I'd like to showcase kind of this new tool that we've been advertising. It's called we'd like to call it RMA Your Way, but really it's what it is a data viewer. It's on the fly information by different spatial units, by county, by state, and different temporal resolutions, monthly versus annual. And you can look at different variables of interest, such as cause of loss or commodity. And the website is right here. It's swclimatehub.info/RMA. And I hope you all take a look at this while I do a brief tour. And you can learn more about where these data came from. You can take a tour before you even want to get into the tool. And we also highly recommend, please give us feedback on anything else you'd like to see from this tool. So I'm going to exit out of my presentation and go to the RMA data viewer. I hope you can all see this. So this is our landing page, and we gave it this title, Agricultural Risk in a Changing Climate. And so you can load the viewer, you can learn more about where these data came from, and then take a tour. So I'm going to go ahead and load the viewer. And so you can see here on this landing page, we have, looks kind of funky at the moment, I don't know why. There we go. And so here you can see county level indemnities. And so what we can do is, if you were interested in a particular county, you can just click on your county. So let's say I was interested in Doña Ana County, which is where I'm located in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and I was interested in, well, what are the top causes of loss over time? So if I select Doña Ana County here in New Mexico, I click this little presentation, and I can see the information here. So first, it lists the top commodities from 2001 to 2016. So here I can see pecans and cotton make up a very large proportion of commodities affected in Doña Ana County. And I can also look at those commodities over time and by month. But if you scroll down, you can also see those indemnities by causes of loss. So you can see the top cause of loss is failure in irrigation supply in Doña Ana County. So if I go back here, let's say I wanted to change the date, and I only wanted to look at 2001. I can just select 2001 and update the map. And so the whole map is updated for just 2001, but I can go back and select Doña Ana County, click on the presentation and see that pecans were the #1 cause of loss in Doña Ana County for 2001. And so if you are changing the dates and these different variables, I would recommend that you don't forget to update and clear so that you are looking at all dates. And so let's say I was interested in Whitman County here in Eastern Washington, known for growing a lot of winter wheat. So we can see here that wheat, unsurprisingly, makes the top cause of loss, or the top commodity. And then the top causes of loss are decline in price, drought, and heat. And so if you want to look at data for the whole nation, then you would just not select any counties, and you can just go back into this presentation. And of course, it's loading. That's the problem with doing a live tour, but it'll show you in aggregate what are the top causes of loss. So you can see that corn, wheat, soybeans, cotton, unsurprisingly, make up the top commodities over the nation. And then here we have drought, excess moisture, decline in price, and hail as the top causes of loss over the whole nation. And if you wanted information by state, you can go into map settings here, and you can change the aggregation unit. So as I said, you can choose different units. Instead of county, you can do by state. You can update the map. And here it'll aggregate all of the data by state instead of by county if you were interested in a particular state. You can also change the causes of loss that you're interested in. So let's say you're interested in drought and heat. So you would use the control button and sub-select 2 of them, and you would update the map. You can also sub-select different commodities if you are interested, and we list here the top 5 commodities, but also there are numerous commodities available to select from. And so we're very interested in people using the tool and learning how users are using it, what other information they would like. We are still working on a way to extract data based on user-defined parameters. Let's say you wanted the data from 2001 to 2016 by month. We're still working on that. That was one comment we got. We're also working at providing maps that people can download. But yeah, so this is our tool, and I hope everyone has a chance to give it a whirl. It's really great, and we're hoping that it spurs other research questions, not just the questions that we've come up with, and hopefully it'll spur some great discussion today. So with that, I think that's everything.
That's great. That was a really wonderful whirlwind tour, Julian. Thanks a lot. I'm wondering almost if it might be good for the purposes of discussion, we could ask people if they have general questions about, this is public, right? So this is a live website. People can go ahead and share this, that URL that's down there in the bottom corner. This is live, and you are very actively seeking feedback on ways to use this. And your stakeholders, I mean, the people that you're imagining using this range from basically to all the large stakeholder groups. So this is policymakers, producers, researchers. Are there other kind of uses from the RMA viewpoint that you can share that they're interested in figuring out how people interact with this viewer?
Yeah, so from the RMA perspective, so, well, to be honest, we were kind of just given this project to work with some available data. So right at the moment, the data are only available in CSV files online. So it's not really discoverable or accessible. If you were to download all of the CSV files at once, you would probably need a powerful computer to actually do any sort of analysis. So the one thing that the one thing that we're able to do is just providing the data online. That's already a huge step. And so I think from the RMA standpoint, putting these data online is already a big step. And receiving any feedback on maybe what do the data mean, the trends and any causes of loss or commodities, what do those mean for you in your area? And that would be really useful feedback, I think, for the Southwest Climate Hub and also for the Risk Management Agency. And I did briefly highlight 2 GAO reports, and one of them was kind of a critique of the Risk Management Agency, and they actually said that putting data online does not constitute a way to keep track of production losses and production risk. So in a way, we're allowing people to see what kind of risk they're having in their backyard by putting these data online. So from the RMA perspective, from the USDA perspective, it's putting these data online and really opening up that streets with a two-way conversation.
Interesting. And the reason for this going back to 2001, you briefly touched on what data sets were available, but can you explain that again?
Oh yeah, sorry. So so data are available back to 1948, but we chose 2001 because for our research question, we wanted to look at trends over time. And to look at these trends over time, we wanted to normalize our data by dividing by the number of acres that are affected by cause of loss. And that information starts in 2001. And so we started then. So we can do this back to 1948, and that's completely doable. But just to be consistent with our 3 objectives, we chose 2001 to 2016. Related to this, I've presented this a few times, and we have received some very good constructive criticism on the trend analysis. Obviously there are issues with the number of people enrolled in the program will obviously affect the total number of indemnities. And just over time, the commodity prices change. And also over time, there's obviously inflation. And so, we're thinking that even taking into account those, we are still seeing trends in certain causes of loss. And that, these are just things that we will explain eventually when we publish a paper on the trends. But regardless, I think just having these available online for people to see is a very important aspect of the project, to be as transparent as possible.
Mhm. One thing that you didn't do on the in your tour is you've got the layer 1 and layer 2. So just wanted to mention if you wanted to give a little pitch for that, how you can basically filter for different things and compare one thing to another is a really nice feature.
Yeah, that's right. And so, yeah, with layer 2, right now we don't have, yeah, I get, yeah. So right now we have 2 different layers. Well, we're hoping, like as Amy said, you can add different layers and you can compare maybe different types of causes of loss. Like as Amy has done this, I didn't even think about that, but we are thinking with different layers, you can add in a climate layer. So you can compare, contrast causes of loss with a climate. Another layer we are thinking is kind of a public lands layer. So there are some areas where there are no causes of loss, and some people are wondering, is that because it's maybe BLM, Bureau of Land Management land, or maybe it's land that's not really suitable for agricultural production. So that's another layer we can add on. But as Amy mentioned, yeah, that is one way to use it, which I haven't thought about, which is great, is to compare maybe different types of causes of loss and flipping between the 2 layers. So yeah, I highly recommend if you want to do that comparison, you use the 2 layers. But if you have other ideas for what kind of layers you would like to compare to, or compare with this indemnity data, that would be a great to get feedback on that.
Do you think it would be possible to even have more than 2 layers to be able to flip between like 3 or 4 or 5, you know?
I think so. Yeah, I'll have to ask our web guy. Oh yeah, I'll have to mention that this tool, I didn't create this web tool. It's a person named Jeb Williamson here at the Jornada, who is great in working with to create this this data portal. I think it helped that I kind of told him to be creative. I think that is also helpful. But yeah, Amy, I think it is possible to put more than 2 layers. And I think if that's something that people are asking for, then yeah, we'll do that. And I think you're right. I think that'd be very useful to have multiple layers.
Well, kudos to you both, and this is what I'm fascinated by is just how fast it could load the data for the entire country. I don't know what you're running this on, but it seems to me to be these are massive data sets, and this program is able to handle it really quickly. It's really amazing to me. It's kind of mind blowing, actually. I was wondering if you might be able to flip back to the Ogallala slides in particular.
Mhm.
The way in which you created them then, as I had sent you a list and you basically
Yeah.
selected all of them. I'm sort of looking like,
Yeah.
so, if
Yeah. So
we wanted to replicate what you were doing and we wanted to use the tool to look at Ogallala counties, we could actually select all the ones we were interested in kind of manually.
yeah, so you would have to do that manually. Yeah. So you would select the county, and then you would have the control button selected, and you would just select all your Ogallala counties.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we don't have a way in the tool right now to do multiple counties. I'm not sure how we would do that. So I was able to create these images that I showed to you today using R. I have the data on my computer, and since you provided a great list of Ogallala counties, I was able to merge the 2 data and just extract what I needed for the Ogallala county.
Mm-hmm.
But you should be able to replicate what I'm presenting here with using the tool, keeping in mind that you would have to, you would also exclude decline in price as a cause of loss and area plant crops only. If you're just interested in the climate, what we're calling climate-related causes of loss, like drought, excess moisture, hail, heat. But yeah, these would be totally the data. Eventually, when we have an ability to extract the data, you would be able to extract those data and then map out or plot however you wish your causes of loss for the Ogallala counties eventually.
Is there a time frame that you can imagine that this kind of data might be extractable by research groups like ourselves?
That's a good question. I would say within the next couple of months. Well, the one thing I'm worried about is that these causes of loss data are not very transparent in terms of when they upload new data or if they change the data set. And so I doubt, so I'm afraid, so I need to do some QA QC on the data, but I also want to see if there's a way that when these data are updated, that we are notified so that we can also update our data. Because I wouldn't want to have old data or data that's not appropriate online. And at the moment, we can't mesh our 2 systems together. So we essentially, whenever RMA updates their data, we have to re-download all the data and then put them back on our data viewer. one limitation to our setup. But I would say within the next 1 to 2 months, Amy, that we can do this so that people can just download the data themselves and they can just extract the county data that they need instead of a huge data set.
Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking, I wanted to take a look at these, the Ogallala slides again. What was there anything? So since you've been working in this data and looking at output from this data, to you, when you look at the Ogallala counties, what were some of your aha? What did you see here? What did it say to you when you first started looking at it compared to some of the other analyses you've done?
Well, I'm not surprised by. I don't want to say that all of the counties are homogeneous in terms of what is grown, but I wasn't surprised to see that wheat, cotton, and corn comprise, more than, I think it's more than 50% of the crops affected by any cause of loss or indemnity. So I wasn't surprised. I was surprised at when I flipped through here for the top cause of loss. I was surprised by the kind of you see drought as the top cause of loss from 2001 to 2016. I was also surprised by the amount of hail affecting it. And so that's obviously, it could be due to the type of crop grown in these areas. And I'm not familiar with all the crops, but so that kind of surprised me. I was expecting just to see all orange across the board. But obviously, as you delve more into the data, you see that there are obviously different causes of loss, not only by county, but over time, which is why I wanted to plot here. I guess you can't see from here. You have 2001, 2011, 2012, so you can see how those causes of loss change. So that was one. Those were a couple of things that surprised me, and then I was also interested in plotting the top 4 or 5 crops, with the wheat, cotton, corn, grain. But then these other little ones, soybeans, dry beans, sunflowers, peanuts, those also surprised me, and so I plotted those too just because I was interested. And it's interesting to see the kind of dichotomy, they diverge in terms of which causes of loss affect those crops, right? You have wheat, cotton, corn, grain, mostly drought, but then dry beans and peanuts, mostly hail or excess moisture. But then peanuts, I thought was very interesting, especially in recent past, starting from maybe 2011. And it's been a diversity of causes of loss. So I'm unsure why that's happening. So that I thought that was very interesting.
It's very interesting. I would like to open it up to our group. If you want to ask any questions, please feel free to do so at any time. Oh, I think Rorik might be talking. I'm not sure. Hold on. Maybe he's muted. Hold on just a sec. Yeah, I wanted to open it up to the group to ask some questions. And you can also put them in the chat box if you want.
Hey, Amy, I have a quick question. This is Dale.
Go for it.
Hey, Julian, I was wondering, is there a lag between when an event occurs and when an indemnity payment actually goes through? Or is that, I'm thinking when you're comparing, for example, drought to the actual indemnity payment, does that happen usually within the same year, just a couple of months lag or something like that? Or is there occasionally a full year lag or more?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I'm still learning about the exact process by which, farmers will report the cause of loss. But I would say it's not more than a year lag. So typically there are these RMA field agents. They'll go out and they'll look to make sure that, there's actually a loss or some sort of crop loss before they report an indemnity. And so I would say that these data maybe have a slight lag. And so part of what we're trying to do is to connect climate, weather and different climate variables with these indemnities to see, even though that these indemnities are, causes of loss are self-reported, is there some sort of, can we actually see that drought signal in these indemnities, despite different conditions, there's obviously price, changes in price. And so I didn't show some of those results, but we are seeing that actually. I will say that, for example, the drought cause of loss is more correlated with kind of the drought indices, right? Like the Palmer Drought Severity Index. And then maybe some other causes of loss are more correlated with temperature and heat. So I would say because of the way that some of these indices are calculated, that we'll see more, it will be dependent on the type of cause of loss and the type of, weather or climate variable that you're trying to correlate it to see whether there's an actual correlation. But the exact lag in terms of reporting and then when I get the data, I would say is minimal.
Good, thanks.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. I also had a question, if you have looked at all, I know you had considered trace as sort of not affected by climate, but I wonder, or not a climate related shock, but I wonder if you have seen any, you know, are prices at all affected by I guess when there's a climate shock, does that affect the rate of indemnity paid because of price? Is that related at all, or do you think those are independent?
Oh, for sure. There is, well, so I haven't looked at specifically at, you know, if there is some sort of change in price, but that cause of loss called, let me go back to that slide. There is a cause of loss called decline in price. And so for the Ogallala, that makes up at least about, was that 5% of total indemnities for this time period. So there is for sure that type of financial cause of loss. And so I took those out because you know, the question at hand is more related to climate, but for sure that would be an interesting question. And so what I failed to mention is that, or, you know, detail more, is that there are different types of insurance programs. There are some related to revenue. So if, you know, on average, if your revenue for 1 year falls below what's been in the past, you'll receive an indemnity. There are ones just based on aerial coverage, such as this area plan crops only. And there are just other ones that actually report a climate related that we're calling cause of loss. But for sure, yeah, you're right. There is some sort of shock, you know, or if there's some sort of change in price, that could also be a cause of loss. But that would be excluded from the analyses here if we're looking at climate related ones.
Gotcha. I hate to take up all the question times.
They're a great question.
The one other thing I was going to ask right along the lines of what you're talking about, though, if you do have information on coverage level and the type of plan, you know, whether it's revenue or yield insurance, is that broken down at all in this tool?
Oh, I didn't hear the last part.
Are those broken down on this tool? Like, can you see by what sort of plan people are enrolling in? Anything about enrollment rates? And then what sort of coverage level people are using?
So that's a great question. So yes and no. So those data are available, and I was really interested in looking at the intersection between causes of loss and, like you're saying, insurance plan and coverage level. Unfortunately, those data are available in a different data set. And I tried to merge them, but that was kind of impossible. And so, but that is an interesting question. I tried looking at that. So, you know, I would say at the very beginning of this data analysis project, I started saying, well, maybe if I just exclude this type of insurance policy, I can look at this. And it turned out it was easier to just exclude different causes of loss. But that is another interesting question too, is looking at the frequency or maybe the types of causes of loss by insurance plan, but also the coverage level over time. Those data are available, yet if we were to include those data, they would not be by causes of loss. I've tried to ask the risk management agency for this, but they've been a little, well, they basically said they don't have time for that. So I'm glad to hear that would be an interesting question, because I thought it was too, to overlay that kind of data on top of what we have right now. But that is something that's kind of on the back burner. But, you know, if we can get RMA to provide those data, that would be great.
Yeah, it seems like from a sort of trying to figure out climate change impacts and the fiscal impacts of that, it seems like it would be interesting to know how farmers or producers are responding to sort of, you know, different sort of shocks that they face and how they change their enrollment decisions based on what they've experienced.
Exactly, yeah, and maybe you're seeing higher premiums in certain areas, right? That can be indicative of higher production risk, right? So, you know, for RMA, that would say, you know, why would you, you know, you would obviously lose money on that. So yeah, that's definitely yeah, we want that data. So yeah, those data do exist, but they're not in the kind of aggregated data set that we'd like with causes of loss, in addition to, as you mentioned, the coverage level and type of claim, because yeah, that will get at exactly that, what you just said.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Varaprasad from Kansas State. Julian, excellent job and really a nice presentation, and opportunities for using this type of tool is very large. So my specific question is that I'm assuming that these are the farmers or the indemnities which have been claimed.
Yeah.
Right? So there may be a lot of farmers or areas which have not been covered by insurance. So actual causes of loss in those counties could be much higher than what you are showing.
That's true. That's right. Yeah. So we could be underreporting the effect of a cause of loss. Exactly. And I'm sorry to cut you off. I will mention that the Farm Service Agency also has a crop insurance program, and they also have some data that we might incorporate somehow, but we haven't done that yet. But you're exactly right. And keep in mind, we're only reporting on the indemnities, the payments made out to farmers, kind of related to what Dale was getting at. We could also report on this, I'm thinking of the word, not the premium, but we can also report on the liabilities. So kind of the how much is your crop worth, right? That the liability could also tell you something over time and space. And so you're exactly right that, that what we're doing is just a snippet of what could actually be happening on the ground, highly dependent on the crop that's grown there and the socioeconomic conditions. But I think it does provide just, a small glimpse into what may be happening and then, potential risk into the future. But yeah, we could be underreporting actual production risk without, So yeah, I agree with your comment.
Yeah.
Do you have other questions, Vera, that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think I'm really amazed by the data set. I mean, it's beautiful. It really highlights that the diversity of the types. In the same county, you have some areas which are drought and some areas are excessive moisture, and then the same thing goes with hail and heat. So it's amazing how it's happening. So yeah, and one thing which really caught my eye was the peanut data, which really shows that heat is a big issue in peanuts. And I didn't really think about that.
I don't know if it's if you want to be picked on, but I was curious to ask Andy Jones from a weather forecasting point of view. Could you let Julian give him some initial take or feedback on what you saw?
I was kind of envious of the actual website data distribution software. I thought it's very clean in how you're distributing that and user friendly. So I understand that you're adding perhaps like a Excel spreadsheet export. Is that true?
Yes, that's what we would like to do, because we would like people to be able to not only download the data in aggregate, but for their own needs, such as for the Ogallala counties, for example. Because otherwise, if you were to download these data yourself, I mean, the files are quite large, and I don't use Excel for that. I use R, and so it takes some sophisticated software to do so. So this is a way of kind of being the middleman for that person, so they have what they need, and then they can do whatever they like with that data.
Yeah, I would just encourage you in that, because of the type of users that we've encountered, that they seem to appreciate that more comfortable interaction for data sets that aren't, these aren't going to really radically change so fast that they can't use a data set like that. But I actually think you guys have done a really great job, and so I think it's just encouraging where this type of analysis tool, I think, will grow and integrate to even other systems, I think, that will be linked into this. So I actually appreciate you all putting it online and giving a tutorial on it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think eventually, we'd also like to continue the research aspect as well. And I'm not sure how that will integrate into the website, but it would be interesting to maybe plot some of those trends I was showing you over time. I'm not, so eventually that would be a great addition to the website, but yeah, at least just providing these data online, people can extract what they'd like and visualize it. That's been our top priority, just because it is all about accessibility, discoverability, and transparency. And that's kind of part of what our new secretary has been aiming for, which is improving the customer service of USDA. So it falls under that as well.
Yeah, another concept that I'll just share, in the weather forecasting world with those operational products, what we found with those individuals is that they appreciated what we would call anomaly products. So you have your time series of the last 15, 16 years. You could normalize that with a fractional incident rate. And then instead of showing absolute numbers, some people might just want the fractional numbers for a quick glance of impact. Also, that could eliminate some of the noise in the very small loss numbers, which are really not that significant, and eliminate the view. So you might have many counties that are not colored in your display. Then folks are really focusing on the big movements of what the anomalies are. And the forecasters in the weather field, a lot of times they're pressed for time, so they're looking for how to filter through the data very quickly. And I assume many people already know which crops they're interested in, so it might be slightly different in terms of the agricultural space, but you do have many crops that you're representing, and that might be a way to allow people to browse through your data much more quickly. So just an idea, and I know you have plenty on your plate, so I'm not sure that's number one on the list to add, but it is a way of displaying data that is very friendly to many people.
No, that's a great comment, and that's something I have been thinking about. And so that's, you know, when I showed that top cause of loss over time map by county, you know, it doesn't get to the fact, like you're saying, like what percentage of total indemnities is that really, right? Is it 10%
Right.
of total indemnities or 50? And I think that would be a really interesting, I don't know what we'd call a variable, put in, like, show me where drought makes up 50% of indemnities. That's a really large, and that's a large proportion of indemnities. And so that can get at, well, there's only wheat grown there, or maybe there's actually something going on in terms of drought impacts on the ground. And so I think that'd be very interesting. And we'd like to eventually figure out a way to look at changes in that relative proportion over time. Like, has it moved from 10% to over 50% of indemnities over time? And so I think that's a great comment. That's something that, yeah, I think that we can easily incorporate, and I'll look into that as well.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you for your comment.
Sure, you're welcome.
The white areas on the map, is that like where also tribal reservations are?
So Helena here, who is our tribal liaison, I share an office with her. You can see her behind me. She asked me, what do the white areas mean for this map? And so those areas have no cause of loss reported for the RMA data, but that doesn't mean that there's no agricultural production, that really there's just no cause of loss reported. So for certain areas, like in northeastern Arizona, that could be because that's the Navajo Nation, or some of these areas are tribal areas. Other hypotheses that we think are moving towards that is such as in West Virginia, a large amount of county, there are no reports. That could be because it's maybe a national park, or it's quite mountainous, so there actually is no production. And so, but that's why I said that we would really like to add a layer of public lands, because that might help us answer that question. But again, as I think Mara said, is that, you know, we actually may also be underreporting the cause of loss, right? This is only those people who have gotten an insurance policy on the crops for a risk management agency and then report a cause of loss.
Yeah, another thing would be, this is correlative analysis to the actual climate impact, in that if you know that a climate anomaly in a drought from the drought conditions are like comparable from one state to another, yet the irrigation crop losses, or not irrigation, but the insurance crop losses are quite different because of contribution and participation in the plan. As far as impact, would there be an economic incentive to encourage more participation, and would that stabilize economic crop decision making if it was better adopted that way? And would one region, is one region perhaps tolerating the climate changes and decisions because of the insurance program? So if I was a USDA official, I would like to use those numbers to say the insurance program is working very well in some areas and less well in other areas. And then is there a way to use these numbers to encourage policy or behavioral improvements as well? So that would be linking it to, you know, quantitative climate data that's more of an absolute climate drought indicator relative to the particular crop type. But you would almost need a crop yield model and some analysis of what that is. But the Ogallala group is building those tools and linking those together. So we might actually be a good partner for that, I think, as time moves forward.
No, that would be great. Yeah. And, you know, we have done a very simple correlative analysis between state level and crop level causes of loss with some climate data, but the spatial scale is very large, as you can imagine. You know, taking an average over a state, I mean, what does that actually mean? And so that's something we've been grappling with, is can we actually correlate, you know, increases in either absolute or relative proportions of causes of loss over time with, let's say, a PDSI or SPI or mean temperature. And of course, the problem with going down to the county level is that not all counties will report a particular crop and will report a particular cause of loss. And you kind of lose your trend analysis. And so we're still figuring out what's the best way to do that. So this trend analysis would be a very coarse look at whether there are some existing trends. But of course, like you mentioned, yeah, doing more sophisticated analyses to look at those correlations would be really great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it create this thing begets more things, which is great.
Yeah.
That's what science is supposed to do.
Yeah.
We are coming up here on the hour, and congratulations, Julian, your voice held out and you've done a fabulous job. I'm sure that this has actually raised more questions for a lot of folks who will now mull over this and hopefully go try out the tool, go give you guys some feedback using the feedback button. I'm sure that, Julian, you're willing to be contacted via email with any questions. And we are actually going to be meeting with the Climate Hubs down in Las Cruces in January to talk about 2018 and beyond, sort of ways of partnering with the Climate Hubs to do more forums like we did before, and also talking about Julian's RMA work. And so if you guys have thoughts and questions and follow-up, you can contact Julian, you can contact me, you can kind of bring up what you thought was interesting anytime to either of us, because this is a conversation that we'd like to continue. Like Andy just said, it seems like there's a lot of great tools being developed, and then figuring out how we can make more sense of things and hopefully inform practice and maybe even policy, which in turn informs practice. And maybe that would be something we'd like to see down the road. Do you have any other things to say before we sign off here, Julian?
No, I really appreciated everyone's attention, and the questions were great. I'm going to provide, my contact information right here, and you can also get it from Amy. But yeah, are there any lingering questions before we end? Yeah.
Hi, this is Rorik Paulman. I'm a producer, Julian, from Southwest Nebraska. In fact, I'm in one of those bigger counties that has I think we're in one of the highest hail rates in the nation in terms of the indemnity payments, and also the cost per hundred. But I was in and out on your presentation, but it was phenomenal. And as a producer, there's probably here more than probably what I would use. But I have one question, and I might have missed it. Do you sort out the revenue protection over the crop production? As opposed to the guarantees, and then can you also sort at the varying levels that a producer decides to participate in? In other words, from the 50% level all the way up to the 80% level, do you have a way of sorting those?
Yeah. So to the last part, we can have the ability to sort by what level that they have, their insurance policy, 50% versus 65%. The only thing with that is that those data aren't available by cost.
Oops,
Well,
we just lost you.
One. I think you were
you cut
getting
out
at
there,
the-
Julian.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna say yes and no. We can separate out by the different protection level, 50% versus 65%, but those data are available in a different data set that don't have causes of loss. So we're trying to get those data integrated so that we can, like you said, somehow you can filter by that. And to your first part, yes, we can also filter by different types of insurance plan. I think you're getting at, like revenue related versus area related, or what type of insurance plan. And that we can do at the moment. We can do that. People are interested in that. But yeah, but we're still working on the coverage aspect.
And Amy, here's why I ask those questions is oftentimes that determines a producer's strategy in terms of whether it's limited water, limited resources, and also the historical losses, because over time, when you have a 10-year basically involvement, that APH, it is very indicative of what you're going to do, and in particular, rotating to a crop that you may get a written agreement with RMA. Say we're going to grow chickpeas this year, or sunflowers, which would be low crop water use, but they're not an approved crop in your county, and so there's no established APH, and so if it's too low and you can't make a guarantee that is good enough to rotate to on, say, a limited water crop, we won't do it. I mean, those are very difficult decisions to make in terms of venturing over into those kind of rotations. But that's just purely from a great presentation, Julian. This was very eye-opening. So thank you.
Thank you. And yeah, and for folks, APH is actual production history. So yeah, as you said, it's the average, previous production history.
And that actually ties in to some conversations that we've had already with the Topeka, Kansas RMA group led by Rebecca Davis. She did an internal webinar with us a few months ago to help explain what went into the creation of the limited irrigation crop insurance program that they have for corn and sorghum in a few counties in Kansas this year. I think it was last year and this year. And we were talking about, well, what would it take to create more of those kinds of programs for different kinds of crops? And we got into this whole APH conversation as well. And so it's sort of interesting to sort of see how some of these groups and thinking could converge, perhaps, Julian, at some point we could, because I think thinking about how people can make those decisions based on growing different crops that take different amounts of water, but they might not have the production history, figuring out how to overcome it sounded like those kinds of things can be overcome, and that maybe using a tool like this in some ways to help inform some of the understanding of what the losses are might be one way to get there.
The last thing I want to ask, Julian, just as a question, can you sort out organic production?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would have to look at that. If there was a specific type of program that they were enrolled in and there was a column, I could do that, but I don't remember seeing one. So I'm gonna say no at the moment. Yeah, that is a good question though.
That's going to be interesting because the APHs, the yields, all of that are going to it's going to change things dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is some limited insurance products out there for organic, but I don't know how extensive it is and for how many crops and for how long those programs have been going on. But it does seem, Julian, that is on the horizon. As we talk with a lot of producers, there are a number of folks that have been conventional for the long term who are now integrating some organic acreage or transitioning into some, they're basically testing it out, and we're encountering that all across the Ogallala actually. So that might be an interesting area to keep on your radar.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I'll take a look at that. That's a great question.
This has been fantastic, Julian. And I recorded this session, so is it something that you'd be willing to let me share a link to with you and with our team for the folks that couldn't join us today?
Oh yeah, that'd be great. In case I lose my voice again, I can just link to Zoom and they can just listen to that.
Yeah, and or I don't know if your slides are something that we could have access to as well. Would that be something you'd be willing to share?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll email the slides, and then I think you have the website, so that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So unless there's any last minute burning questions, we'll say we'll say goodbye and have a great week, everybody, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and congratulations to all of you who made it through the semester.
Thanks, Amy.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Take care.